Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm Margaret Howell, your host, and I'm reporting from our live Right Side Broadcasting Network news studio here in Washington, D.C. Now, we have a lot going on today, some breaking news for you, and it looks like the White House press briefing room, where we're supposed to be reporting just ahead of the press briefing that Sarah Huckabee Sanders gives, and it looks like that tentatively has been canceled because of this breaking news, and President Trump himself is set to speak at 3 p.m. Eastern. Now, we're working on getting you the live stream of the president speaking, and of course we know he's most likely going to be addressing the situation that's happening with North Korea. It's currently developing, and the breaking news that we have for you, so a couple of conflicting reports, but this is the one that I wanted to bring you to. North Korea has launched another missile, it looks like, that has reportedly hit just off the coast of Japan. And they're saying that, now we know that we reported on in September that North Korea had launched a ballistic missile that had hit. And we're looking at this news as it's breaking. And it looks like one Japanese news agency is reporting this. They were able to hear a lot of radio signals and a lot of chatter. And it looks like they have launched, and it has landed just off the coast of Japan. Now, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for North Korea and their interballistic missile testing? And do they have the nukes the capability and the nuclear program that they're saying that they're doing? I just got a message from our boss, Joe Seals in Alabama. He's saying no press briefing today. Trump is going to speak at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to keep you posted on that. And I'm going to get your comments pulled up and your questions. And forgive me, I just got this news myself, and I was planning on talking about today with you tax reform, the president canceling his meeting with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi amid some pretty fiery tweets this morning, and what this could mean for a possible government shutdown. And of course, we know when we say government shutdown, all we really mean when we're saying that, not to get you worked up over that, but will the budget pass? Will the money be there for the programs? That's what we're talking about with that. So let me get this live chat pulled up, but the breaking news of the day is that North Korea has launched yet another missile, and it looks like it has our friends and allies in the Pacific on very high alert. And of course, President Trump will be addressing this today. That's the speculation at 3 o'clock. Now, the last press conference that I covered for you, just before the Thanksgiving holiday, and welcome back, by the way. Thank you so much for coming back and for joining me here at Right Side. But the last one that we covered, if you recall, Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, actually went before the press, and he was announcing a cabinet meeting that the president had with his cabinet regarding North Korea and these sanctions that were being imposed on North Korea, the regime, recognizing them, as this diplomatic regime that is way out of bounds. And they were talking about the sanctions that they're going to be imposing on them, and how previous administrations that had worked with Pyongyang had mentioned, they'd mentioned that there was this diplomatic approach. And something that Rex Tillerson had said, we seem to be having a more hardline approach when it comes to North Korea and imposing sanctions so that they don't have the ability to develop their nuclear program any further than they already have. I've reported the past couple of years about the activity of North Korea, and we know that they've done these missile tests periodically, and they've launched ballistic missiles. We know this. We know that in September there was one of these such tests. I believe it was September the 15th rather. I'm getting Reuters pulled up here, talking about the radio signal that Japan had picked up. And it is confirmed, we can confirm, that North Korea has fired a ballistic missile. And what we see is this, the president has just come back from that Asian trip, 14 days in Asia, promoting U.S. trade, promoting relationships that we need to be building with China. And is this in response to China putting pressure on North Korea to tamper down their nuclear program? This blustering that Kim Jong-un does, he put our president on a he called for his death because he made fun of him. And, we see this really irrational response from North Korea. And it looks like this may just be some form of blustering. But here's what we know. We know this from South Korea and their Joint Chief of Staff. They said this in a statement that Pyongyang has launched an unidentified ballistic missile eastward from the vicinity of Pyeongchang, And this happening, of course, they're ahead of us. So this happening, this news is breaking. And it talks about, this article talks about the increased frequency and how daring this missile testing has become, sending 2 missiles, not 1 but 2 missiles over Japan in August and September, while demonstrating this progress that's suggesting to us that they could strike the United States. And that's at the heart of this. How far can these ballistic missiles go? What is their capability? How far are they in terms of development in their nuclear arsenal, and can they potentially hit the United States? That's the question. And of course, specifically Guam, which is a U.S. territory, we know that that has been in talks in the media. We know that it's been talked about in political articles such as this, and that's the concern, that North Korea has the capability of attacking the United States. Now, we know that the president has referred to Kim Jong-un as Rocket Man or Little Rocket Man. He did this in September 19th at the UN. He warned that North Korea, if they threaten the U.S., if they threaten our allies, that we're going to have no choice but to destroy North Korea. And I'm quoting here. And then he called Kim Jong-un Rocket Man, and rightfully so. I stand behind the president, and I really love and respect our president and respect his administration. And what I can tell you, this situation, while it's really precarious, this is nothing new. You know, we've seen these threats and taunts and torments from North Korea for a very long time, not just since a Trump presidency, but what we've seen in the past are the Obama administration, you know, trying to use this diplomatic arm in incentivizing North Korea. That clearly hasn't worked. And I really respect our president for calling out what this is and, you know, saying that we basically have no choice, because this leader, you know, Americans, it is so dangerous to even be traveling through the borders of North Korea. We saw what happened to Otto Warmbier, the student. He basically came home as a vegetable, died a week later. You know, they basically sent him home in a body bag. And pardon me, we're getting some breaking news here. I'm sorry, this is our own site, and I want to keep you guys updated on this, because typically I do this every day. You're gonna be seeing me every day, guys, if you're not used to this already, and coming to you ahead of our press briefings. But today it looks like it's canceled, and it looks like the president himself is going to address the nation regarding what's happening. So Washington, it says that it's going to be applying maximum pressure and sanctions to stop North Korea. That's exactly what we heard Rex Tillerson say last week. And we're reaching the stage where it will be able to develop. We want to make sure that it doesn't have the ability to develop this nuclear warhead on its ICBM. We know that Kim does this. We know that he does these tests. We know that there's a lot of blustering, a lot of posturing, and you know, something that the president said about him, the North Korean dictator responded by saying that our president was a mentally ill U.S. deranged dotard, whatever that means, excuse me. So we know that there's a lot of name calling and a lot of silliness on the part of North Korea, but this is very serious, folks, because we really don't understand the capability that they have. We really don't understand how far they can take this. And the main concern is, can they hit the U.S. with an ICBM? Can they hit the U.S. with a ballistic missile? Can they attack Guam? Can they engage us in a war? And this kind of blustering is very alarming. We're seeing CBS News now pick this up. Reuters has picked it up. And my go-to is always the Daily Mail. I love to start there. And it's talking about this one article about how our allies in Japan, they detected this radio signal and a lot of chatter, and then they were able to positively identify that North Korea conducted this missile test, which is incredibly troubling. And just to take you to this article that was coming out of Tokyo, and Reuters has translated it and put it on their site, it says that Japan has detected 2 radio signals suggesting that North Korea may be preparing for yet another ballistic missile launch, although such signals are not unusual, and satellite imagery did not show fresh activity. The government is saying that this is happening as of yesterday, and then we can confirm that they did it. So it looks like after firing these missiles at a pace of about 2 or 3 a month since April, the last one that they launched was in September. We were expecting another missile test in October for them, so this is coming rather late, but it looks like they're pursuing this program, and it looks like they're in this push to make sure that they have the nuclear capability to launch a war and possibly hit the mainland of the U.S. This is really troubling in this report. Yonhap news agency coming out of South Korea is also confirming the Japanese report, and also intelligence officials in the U.S. Some of these articles are citing what the intel community is saying here, and it backs up everything that was coming out of Japan and that this actually happened. What I had hoped to talk to you today about, because it's an issue that's really passionate for me, is the president being able to pass the budget and make sure that there is no government shutdown heading into the new year. And I found his tweet so hilarious this morning about Chuck and Nancy and how, let me just get this pulled up for you. And I don't mean to be ignoring you guys. I'm going to head to your questions and comments in just one moment. But I want to make sure that I get all the information out ahead of the president's press briefing. And no doubt this will be centered around North Korea. And like I said before, the White House press briefing has been moved or canceled altogether, and it looks like the president is going to be addressing the nation live. Okay, so what we had hoped to talk about, because this was 5 hours ago, the president was supposed to be meeting with Senate leaders House Leader Nancy Pelosi and Senate Leader Chuck Schumer, talking about keeping the government open and how we have specific issues that are addressing the nation. And he put this very simply. Now, I just got a message to stand by from Jacob that we're going to be bringing you the president's remarks very soon. It looks like he's going to be making his way to the podium to address the country over this. So in the meantime, I just want to take you back to the possibility of a government shutdown. It looks like Pelosi and Schumer have walked away from the negotiation, and of course the president tweeting out this morning, the problem is they want illegal immigrants flooding into our country unchecked. They're weak on crime. They want to substantially raise taxes. I don't see a deal. Of course, we know that the president and the congressional leaders have to come to a deal to get this passed so that we don't see a shutdown, meaning they have to agree on a budget and what the U.S. will fund heading into the fiscal year and what we won't fund. So that battle was taking place this morning, and it looks like this breaking news. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm standing by. Forgive me for looking at my phone, guys, just making sure that we're not taking you live now. Now, this was just tweeted to me, and it looks like somebody just said, and I want to read this out. Thank you for watching, guys. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can find us at Right Side Broadcasting Network. You can also find our new DC Twitter handle at RSBN DC. And be sure to follow us. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and donate. rsbn.tv/donate. We appreciate you and we love you, and we depend on you to keep us on the air. So make sure you keep us in mind. Now, somebody just tweeted this to me. Even if it adversely affects North Korean citizens, food aid cut, the fate of NK peoples is in Kimberly's hands. Well, we need to keep this a civilized discussion. You know, I do agree with that point, though, that the fate of the North Korean people is ultimately in the hands of its leader. And we know that they're starving. We know that they're hurting economically. We know that the U.S., and because of our partnerships and allies and the sanctions we've been able to impose, has really stifled business and activity. And my heart really goes out to the North Korean people, because this is not their fight. You know, we're talking about a blustering demagogue who has been in power. The father was in power. Now we're seeing it from the son, who commits acts of foreign terror on, foreign soil. He commits acts of terrorism. He kills his own leaders. We saw this with the brother, the half-brother, being murdered just recently in the past few months. And we know that these acts are committed on foreign soil. We know that there's a complete disregard for international law. And it looks like what's happened last week with Tillerson coming before the nation and saying, you know what, we're imposing additional sanctions. It looks like North Korea is posturing itself to let us know, and possibly the world know, that it has this capability to possibly launch a missile that could hit the U.S. mainland, that could hit our allies, that could hit U.S. territories. And Jacob, just let me know. I'm on standby, just making sure that I don't talk over Trump's remarks. We're on standby, going to bring you the speech live. It looks like we've got it up and running. And in the meantime, all we've been talking about this past week, and this is, I hate to say this like this, but it's a refreshing change to get back to news from my perspective, instead of talking about sexual assault allegations that are primarily addressed at Democratic leaders like Al Franken. We know that Al Franken did a press statement yesterday, and I don't know if any of you saw it, but his victims are calling for his resignation, and other members of the House are calling for Franken to resign, along with Representative Conyers. There's a lot of pressure. He did address those, saying that he was not going to resign, but it looks like the pushback happening in the media from these accusers is really gaining traction, and I hope to bring you guys more on that as we have it. And I don't mean to sound lopsided or one-sided, but I have to tell you, all week long, I know we've covered the election, possible election of Roy Moore, but these allegations have centered around liberal leaders, liberal mainstream media commentators, and it seems to be largely a Democrat issue from what I can see, and I was hoping to be able to talk to you about this a little bit more. And again, we're just on standby waiting for President Trump to come to the podium and address what's happening. Now, while we're still waiting on him, if you guys have any questions for me or comments, make sure that you send them my way. Forgive me, this is taking a little bit of time and it's not loading as quickly as I would like, so I can't see if you're interacting with me, and my apologies. Just give me 1 minute to get this pulled up. And it looks like I'm frozen. So if you guys are commenting or putting your questions up, of course, you do it on our live chat. You can also tweet them to me, and my Twitter is open at the moment. You can tweet me at Margaret J. Howell, or you can tweet us at Right Side Broadcasting, which is at RSBN DC. Also have access to that at the moment. My goodness. I'm wondering how, when the president addresses the nation today, I'm wondering what we're going to see from CNN, what we're going to see from CBS, NBC. And we know that the president has called their coverage dishonest, corrupt, and distorted. And I'm wondering how they're going to frame this, because he had an incredibly successful trip, that 14-day stint, the Asian tour, and incredibly successful partnerships created. We saw, and I'm wondering how this is going to be framed today. Excuse me. So Jacob just messaged in, it looks like remarks will not be replayed back. No problem on that. That might be why I can't see it. If you guys are talking to me, my apologies. I can't get it up and see it. And we're just waiting. Let me make sure I've got my updates right. And this breaking, of course, now the primary concern of this entire deal, and I want to break this down as simply as I can. The primary concern is that North Korea within a year will have the capability to do damage. There won't be this bluster, there won't be this provocation, there won't be, this posturing of doing these missile tests. The fear is that they will have the absolute capability, and I'm on Yonhap, South Korean news agency right now in English. It's taking its time to load. But that's the concern. And right on the cover of this news agency coming out of South Korea, it says South Korea's military stages a, quote, precision strike missile exercise in response to North Korea's missile launch. And this, of course, is breaking. It looks like they're doing exercises, getting ready in the event that anything may happen. And this could potentially have some serious consequences. Consequences for Hawaii, consequences for Guam. In the event that they've developed this program, how far can they take this? What does this mean for people living in the United States? And the blustering that we've seen come out of Pyongyang in the past, not only the past 11 months since President Trump's presidency began, but this kind of blustering and posturing has been happening for a very long time. Now, this remark coming out of South Korea as well, it says that North Korea has been developing its nuclear weapons at a faster rate than expected. We cannot rule out the possibility that North Korea could announce its completion of a clear force within 1 year. And this news coming out of Seoul, it looks like the concern is from South Korea that they're going to have this capability. And we know the threat that they pose to their neighbors. We know the threat, and we had hoped that the president had indicated this, that the pressure that China could potentially, China is very central to this, and they have the ability to pressure North Korea in a way that the U.S. would not. And it looks like, for whatever reason, I'm anxious to see what, actually I'm going to hold that statement. I'm anxious to see what President Trump has to say about this before I comment. And again, we're just on standby. We're waiting for the president to appear and address the nation concerning this latest missile test. Now, the one that happened in September, the testing that they did, that marked the 6th test that they had done. And I just want to take you to this really quickly. This also coming out of Yonhap News Agency. The North Korean government conducted its 6th and most powerful test in September, firing not one but 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles this year. It's refrained from provocations following its launch, and it's an immediate range missile over Japan on September the 15th. And then, of course, we know, based on Japanese news sources, that they fired. Okay. So what does this mean? I hate that I can't read your comments, but I don't know if any of you have any concern about this. I am incredibly confident in the way that this administration is handling and their response to North Korea, their response to the blustering coming out of Pyongyang, their response to this. I don't know what other choice that they would have other than to impose sanctions. I mean, we have someone who's incredibly unstable, who is threatening nuclear war with the United States, and it's a bizarre thing that our own media has framed it in the way that they framed it. And you know, the president, he's not inciting violence, he's not inciting Kim Jong-un. What we see here, and in my opinion, is that we just don't have a choice except to make sure that the money is cut off so that they don't have the capability of further advancing this program. Now, while we're waiting for President Trump, the breaking news of the day, it looks like North Korea has conducted yet another ballistic missile test. I want to take you to this article that I found, and this happening yesterday. We have members on the Hill that are, in my opinion, very neocon, very pro-war, and in my opinion, I mean, I guess it's not my opinion, I guess it's a fact here. You know, one such as John McCain, we saw this with the arming of Syrian rebels a couple of years back. You know, he's been pro-war for a while here, and he's reignited this personal war with President Trump, and he takes a jab at him, telling Esquire magazine, and I don't personally read Esquire magazine, so this really doesn't, I wouldn't have known this had this not been in a news cycle. He goes on to say, I don't agree with the way that President Trump is conducting his presidency. Obviously, he's an individual that unfortunately is not anchored by a set of principles. I completely disagree with that. I don't understand why Senator McCain is taking potshots at the president at this moment, given the fact that we need a unification. And even members in our party, they come across as very hateful and very bitter. And in my opinion, it only hurts the party. 2018 midterms are just around the corner. And I think that making comments like this openly, they do nothing but damage the party. And, you know, wow, just wow. Now, I'm assuming that this would be in response to the president's comment yesterday on Twitter. And this happened at 9:04 yesterday, and he was talking about how we should have a contest as to which networks, plus CNN, not including Fox, are the most dishonest, corrupt, distorted, etc. in its political coverage of your favorite president, me. They're all bad. And then he talks about a fake news trophy. So you can understand the frustration, even looking at the press briefings and the hostility that comes out of reporters and correspondents and the way that they address the administration with the questions. But in my opinion, maybe the Twitter focus should be less on this for now and more on news that is could potentially greatly affect Americans. Jacob, I'm assuming we're still waiting. Now, Another article that Reuters put up and Drudge headlined it, Hawaii to resume Cold War era nuclear siren test. This coming out today. So it looks like they're going to be having these statewide testings of, it's a siren, just like we saw in the Cold War era when an impending nuclear attack from Russia was waiting to happen. The first time in 30 years we've seen anything like this. And it's just to alert citizens that potential nuclear weapon is headed their way. And I don't know if you've ever heard one of these, but it's like a wailing siren. It's an air raid siren, and it sounds for about 60 seconds each time it does it. This happening from 400 different locations across the Central Pacific Islands starting at 11:45 Friday. So they're going to start these tests this week, and they're going to be repeated on the first business day of each month. This coming out of state officials, and you really feel for Hawaii. I mean, they're having to bring back these Cold War era style sirens. I can only imagine how scary this is. This was discontinued, this practice of these sirens, in the 1980s as the Cold War was drawing to a close, and it looks like they're going to be reactivated because of these test launches from North Korea that are capable of reaching Hawaii. This is unfortunate, we know, and if anybody's living in Hawaii listening to me, these things are really a nuisance. They're incredibly blaring and annoying, and they really put a cramp in the day. But this is what it's come to. We haven't seen a siren test like this in 30 years, and it looks like, the era that we're living in and the nuclear capability of North Korea, they're going to be brought back. Just getting you some more information on this now. It's been my experience that the coverage of North Korea and what we've been talking about primarily, aside from nuclear attacks, are cybersecurity attacks and what is their capability of cybersecurity. And that's where the conversation has been centered around for the most of the year, aside from the nuclear capability of what can they hit and do they have the nukes. It's what can they do in terms of cyber attacking. And, this just is amazing to me that we're even discussing this. I don't know if you guys remember this story. I wanted to pull it up really quickly. It came out, I believe, in March. And I was talking about the secret cyber war that our president inherited against North Korean missiles. And it looks like President Obama ordered Pentagon officials to step up their cyber and electronic strikes against the missile program. And this was kind of a secret story. It never really went anywhere. I remember covering it months and months ago. But it looked like the United States was trying to sabotage their program through this type of cyber warfare. There were not a lot of reports coming out after that of how successful we were, and in terms of the scale of what we could do. But I don't know if you remember this. A large number of North Korean military rockets began to explode or veer off course, or even disintegrate in midair and plunge into the sea. And people looking at it said that it was, in fact, this cyber war that we had instigated against North Korea. I can't confirm that, but I thought that was a really interesting story. And it was a part of the Pentagon's disruption effort to combat this program from developing without having this, face-to-face conflict. And it looks like North Korea is a pretty growing and urgent problem for the U.S. in terms of foreign policy. Now we're 20 minutes past when, and it looks like our confirmation is that we're still in fact waiting for President Trump to come on and remark live. And guys, forgive me, I had prepared, normally we do 20 to 30 minutes prior to the White House press briefing, and that's always fun. We try to give you an update of the stories of the day and talk about what the White House is going to be covering, what Sarah Huckabee Sanders is going to be covering and addressing the news of the day. And I had prepared so much over tax reform, what this means if we see a shutdown, what the issues are. And 20 minutes prior to coming on, we get this breaking piece of news that it looks like we're going to be having an issue with North Korea sooner than we thought. And all of that was scrapped at the last minute, which sometimes happens, and that's totally fine. But that's the information that I have for you. Hold on. Just messaging Jacob and Joe down in Alabama. And it's difficult, guys, because there's not a lot of interface. Forgive the cell phone, but any information I get, I'm in Washington, D.C., and they're in Alabama. And I'm just trying to make sure that I don't talk over President Trump as he's coming in and speaking. Now, I don't know if you guys saw this or not, and it's pretty interesting to me. The news cycle of the day has really changed, and it's centering around what the U.S. is doing in terms of North Korea. But something I thought was a really interesting story, and I tweeted out, the First Lady, the White House is absolutely stunning. Yesterday it was announced that the Christmas decorations are complete, and somebody had put up this story, and I don't have it in front of me, but the difference between the Obama White House Christmas card and the Trump Christmas card that went out, they're quite staggering, the difference. I'm not going to go into much of that right now, but if you get a chance, look that up and Google that story, because it was really interesting to me, and I thought, you know, somebody else is going to want to see this. Now, taking you back, because I have an update regarding this ballistic missile testing, it looks like the Pentagon's initial assessment found that the ICBM traveled 1,000 km before splashing down just off the coast of Japan. Now, the Japanese Prime Minister's office said that this missile appeared to fly for about 50 minutes in length. The missile flew over Japan's North Main Island and fell into the Pacific Ocean. And experts are saying this was, of course, a nighttime launch. They're saying that it was intended to simulate a real-world military scenario. So it looks like their exercise, that's what they're calling their exercise in response to this. It looks like this missile was launched in the middle of the night last night and landed just off the coast of Japan. Now, as I stated before, it's been 2 months since we've seen any sort of missile testing. And something else that South Korea, the unification minister, this is what he's saying. More news coming out of South Korea. North Korea has been developing its nuclear weapons at a faster than expected pace. We cannot rule out the possibility that North Korea could announce its completion of a clear force within 1 year. That's the story. And the U.S. response, Hawaii, the state of Hawaii, is now conducting for the first time in over 3 decades these air raid sirens, making sure that its citizens are on high alert just in case a missile is out of their way. The launch of, this launch that happened, it's following this flurry of radio signals and this activity at a North Korean missile base, and they're confirming all this information as we speak. Now, it looks like the launch came out of South Pyongyang province, pardon me if I'm mispronouncing that, at 3:17 a.m. And the question here is the trajectory. How far can they go? What is their capability? How developed are they in this program? And is this just all talk and blustering on the part of Kim Jong-un? Does he have the capability to actually strike the United States? Will he have that capability in the near future? And what will the U.S. response be concerning it? Now, just trying to get any more information that I can. And again, I had hoped that, I kind of hoped that we were going to be talking about Elizabeth Warren today and those really controversial statements, and then the president making that joke over Pocahontas yesterday. A lot of, not funny news, but lighthearted news in this news cycle. And I don't think that we should get to any of that at the moment, because we are waiting for the president's response to this latest incident regarding North Korea. And I hate that I can't see your comments, because I love reading about, specifically, we have a few really lively people that comment, I've noticed. And regarding the government shutdown, I would love to be reading your comments at the moment. And what you make of the president's tweet this morning about his meeting with, quote, Chuck and Nancy. And it's all about keeping the government open and working and making sure that there is no shutdown. And of course, the president casting doubt on, our ability to even avoid the shutdown, because apparently Democrats on the Hill, they don't want to come to the table and they don't want to talk about real issues. Then, of course, he talks about, hold on one second, just getting an update from Jacob. Okay. He's saying we're still waiting for the president to come. Now, going back to what I was saying in terms of this government shutdown and what it means for the everyday hardworking American person out there who's paying their taxes. The government shutdown, just a word for, is the budget going to be approved? And is the money going to be there for the next fiscal year for all the money that Congress appropriated to specific programs, departments, agencies, you name it? It's like, is the money going to be approved to be where it needs to be? And the main issues on the table that the president cited were crime and illegal immigration. Those were the first two. And just going to the first one of illegal immigration, because we know that it's related to crime if it goes unchecked in the country. He talked about this, and he talked about it in not an accusatory tone, but he was pointing out the fact that we're talking about two Democratic leaders that don't have the interest of Republicans, and certainly the sentiment of many Americans that, illegal immigration is a massive problem. We covered this border security personnel and his murder 2 weeks ago on the border. He was ambushed by illegal aliens and he was bashed in the head with a rock. And of course, this brings us back to, we had a president who was a candidate who ran on the promise of building a wall. And, we're at the table now, and we're talking about a budget, and it looks like the holdup is coming from Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi regarding, making the compromise of this is what we will pay for, this is what we won't pay for. He polished off that tweet with, they want to substantially raise taxes. I don't see a deal. And, we've seen this simplification of the tax code under Republicans. We're headed for major tax reform, and we saw it pass the House recently. It's headed to the Senate, and the major thing on the table is that Obamacare mandate and getting rid of it, because it unfairly punishes people like me, frankly, who paid the Obamacare mandate. It's a burden on people that don't necessarily put a burden on the system, and it kind of goes back to that. And will we see it removed? I know that Senator Rand Paul is pushing for its removal, as are others. And I'm just trying to make sure that I don't miss a single update regarding this press conference. Some news coming out of the Hill that is not funny. I don't want to call it funny because, it's not funny. It's amusing, the mud fight that's happening with Elizabeth Warren. She accused President Trump of using a racial slur. And of course, the controversy surrounding Elizabeth Warren is that she claimed to be partially Native American on a college application to be able to be at Harvard. And she blasted President Trump for, quote, throwing out a racial slur when he called her Pocahontas. And he did this when during this White House ceremony honoring World War II Navajo code talkers. Of course, we saw that was on the president's schedule this week. And it's not funny, but I want to read you what Warren said about the president, and then we'll talk about it. Now, of course, she said this on MSNBC Live. And MSNBC Live, the caption underneath it, it said, Trump mocks Senator Warren. They don't even call him President Trump. They call her Senator Warren, whatever, during meetings with Native American war heroes. And this was her response to that. She said, it's deeply unfortunate that the President of the United States cannot even make it through a ceremony honoring the heroes without having to throw out a racial slur. So she's accusing him of throwing out a racial slur when it's apparent that that was a fabricated college application. She's clearly not Native American. I guess if you want to get technical, this is a melting pot. I'm assuming somewhere in her ancestry, perhaps you could, I mean, they're pointing out the fact that this college application and what she did, you know, calling herself a Native American wasn't entirely true. She shoots back with, he's simply a racist. Now, the Twitter storm has been abuzz, and if you guys haven't seen Ann Coulter's response to this, I encourage you to check it out. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to misquote her, and I don't want to read it directly, but I found it really interesting. This is what Press Secretary Sarah Sanders had to say. I think what most people find offensive is Senator Warren's lying about her heritage to advance her career. And I fall in that camp. And forgive me, I'm not sure if this was a college application or if it was because she was going to speak or be affiliated with Harvard University. I'm a little behind the curve. I've been following the fight, and I'm not really sure what she lied on in terms of her heritage. But I believe it was a college application. And forgive me if I have that incorrect, and it was so she could work there and not attend school there. But regardless, now, President Trump, this was the joke that he actually made during the speech on Monday honoring Navajo war heroes. And they used their language to protect the U.S. military communications during World War II with specific code. And this is what the president said. You were here long before any of us were here, although we have a representative in Congress who say that they were here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas. So he didn't actually call Senator Warren out by name, but everybody knew the reference that he was making. And of course, the mainstream media went ablaze with this Pocahontas story. Now, we're still waiting for President Trump. And he was set to come on 32 minutes ago. It looks like he's running behind schedule. And we know that the White House press briefing was also set to take place at 3 o'clock today. And this news segment was originally supposed to be ahead of that. And just some more updates, and I think I gave this one to you a little bit earlier, but talking about the speed of the missile that was conducted and the range. I just want to make sure that I get it right. And this, of course, the cover of Drudge has been updated several times in the past 30 minutes since I've been talking, but the latest one, North Korea fires ICBM flight record 50 minutes. So it looks like from the time they launched at roughly 3:15 in the morning, it made its way to just off the coast of Japan within 50 minutes, which is pretty troubling if you think about it. I believe the coast of Japan, and this report says that it's 600 miles away. And just to make sure that I'm accurately reporting this, Yonhap News is the best place I can go to for the most up-to-date information because it's South Korea's news service. And this just updated, this is breaking news. North Korea's missile fires around 9:60 km at an altitude of 4,500 km. They were able to take that missile once launched and get it to just off the coast of Japan within 50 minutes. And the concern is that they're readying completion of a nuclear force by next year that will have the capability of hitting the U.S. mainland, which is incredibly troubling to anybody looking at this. This is not light stuff here. And, you know, we have to really question our approach, you know, and I believe that we're doing the right thing. I really appreciated Secretary Tillerson's statements regarding the U.S. and our policy and this cautious approach that we're taking, and trying to ratchet up sanctions so that they don't have the economic capability of bringing this program any further. But it looks like their development is faster than expected. This coming out of Seoul. The South Koreans are saying that this program is faster than they expected, and that they cannot rule out the possibility that North Korea would announce its completion of a clear force within 1 year. And that's incredibly troubling. Now, as I said before, this is the 6th and most powerful nuclear test. September, of course, firing those 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles this year. September was the second one. But it looked like to me that North Korea up until this point had refrained from any type of direct provocation until now. The signal that this is sending, this immediate range missile over Japan, first September the 15th, and now, you know, breaking news today, what this means for us. And of course, we're just waiting to bring you President Trump's statement regarding this live. Now, something that we had hoped, because we saw North Korea stop what I would call its provocation for a couple of months, and it wasn't a long enough period of time, but the hope was that there would be a dialogue that would open up with the North Korean government, with those officials in Pyongyang, and that perhaps there would be an understanding that having this nuclear arsenal, the rest of the world is not going to accept it. We can't tolerate it, and the blustering and the threats coming out of Pyongyang will not be tolerated because, as our president calls him, Rocket Man, and rightfully so, it's incredibly troubling to think that a dictatorship that has aim at the U.S. now has the capability of striking and hitting the U.S. with an ICBM. That's incredibly troubling, and it's also incredibly troubling that it only took 50 minutes for them to reach the coast of Japan. I just want to make sure that I'm making my updates as up to the date, as up to the minute as possible here. Just one moment. And you guys let me know what you think. And I can't read your comments at the moment, but I always go back and I try to read and respond to questions and comments. What do you think this means for us, the United States? What do you think the United States and our response should be to North Korea and this information? And are we doing the right thing? Is there more that we could do in terms of ratcheting up a clear, not carrot and stick at this point, because we did announce that we have sanctions that are being imposed on North Korea, that we're stepping those up. But what should our response be? I love our comments, and especially people living in Hawaii, because this could potentially affect you more so than it affects the rest of us at this moment. Like I said before, we were thinking that we were going to be talking about today the Senate committee advancing the tax bill and moving closer to a floor vote, but instead of that, we're talking about North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un and the ballistic missile testing that he conducted last night, which is breaking news at 3:15 a.m. that struck dangerously close to Japan, just off its coastline. Only took them 50 minutes to do it, and we can confirm that this missile testing may be a larger indicator that their program is in troubling development, a place where we don't want it to be in terms of their capability and whom they could hit, whom they could threaten, and could an ICBM hit the United States and potentially strike either the U.S. mainland or U.S. territory within the coming year. That's the major concern on the table here. And I don't mean to say that selfishly. Obviously, I'm sitting in the United States of America saying this because we know that our friends and allies in the Pacific are critical to helping us and reining this in. But at the same time, looking at this from an American perspective, you really have to be concerned, because we know that this dictator has made us, called us the target. And that's pretty troubling in terms of what he could do. Going back to Jacob Seals here for just a minute. And it looks like we have over 3,100 people watching our live stream at the moment. Hello and welcome. I'm Margaret Howell reporting for Right Side Broadcasting Network, live from our Washington, D.C. studio. And I'm alone in studio today. I usually have a helper sometimes. Of course, we connect to Alabama to bring you this live feed stream. And we typically do this ahead of the White House press briefings, just to be able to give you an update over what Sarah Sanders is going to be talking about with the press, the president's agenda, and then we do a post-show follow-up. We were a little bit interrupted today with this breaking news coming out of South Korean news agencies and Japanese news agencies. They made their way onto Drudge, and of course, we're bringing you the live feed of this and the news as we have it in real time. North Korea conducting a missile strike, a missile launch in the middle of the night that was dangerously close to Japan, just off their shoreline. And what does this mean for the U.S.? What does this mean for our relationship moving forward? What does this mean in terms of their capability of launching a ballistic missile? How far can it go? How quickly can it go? And what should our response be? Now, we know that the press briefing has been canceled for the day in light of this, and we're 40 minutes past when the president was supposed to take the podium and speak, and we're just waiting on him making sure that we have the most, and just yes, and our feed is going to be up and running, so you're going to be able to hear President Trump speak and address the nation, presumably concerning what I thought was going to be the tax plan, government shutdown, and lack of negotiation with Democrat leaders on the Hill. That's where I thought the direction of the news day was going to go. Looks like now we have this breaking news regarding North Korea, and I want to take you back to some facts while we're waiting for the president to come on and speak. Just getting my latest pulled up here from... And I don't know if any of you follow, North Korea has their own Twitter, the government has their own Twitter handle, and I don't mean to be promoting that live on the air, but it's interesting just to get a perspective of who they are and how they think. And I'm trying to get this pulled up now. It's called DPRK News Service. DPRK News Service. The official feed of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Okay. And the best I can verify, this is their official feed. I don't know that, I can't 100% sure say that this is their official feed, but this is something that I look at, and it's my belief that this is, you know, a feed coming out, and it's in English. And these tweets are so nonsensical, I hate even looking at them. But they don't address on this, quote, official news feed of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, this latest missile strike. They're not addressing it on this Twitter feed, so we don't have a response yet as to North Korea and what they're calling what they did. They do mention, however, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, if you're watching our live feed, major fan, we love you, and love your Twitter feed. I guess it's an honor to be called a fascist leader by the DPRK News Service. But no word yet officially from North Korea regarding the launch that they committed and why. Not that any logic comes out of that. One can only imagine the propaganda that's being blasted within the North Korean border to its own people regarding this last launch of this ballistic missile. Now, the latest update I have is from 15 minutes ago, just talking about the speed, the trajectory, and when this happened. It was 1:30 p.m. approximately Eastern Standard Time, 3:17 a.m. I'm sorry, 3:30 a.m. approximately their time, which is why this is just, you know, it's breaking still. The White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders saying on Twitter that President Donald Trump was briefed while the missile was still in the air about the situation in North Korea, and it looks like Guam, their Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense, they're posting on Facebook that they were notified that North Korea conducted a ballistic missile launch, but there was no immediate threat to them and no action required of them. The U.S. Defense and Intel officials that are looking at this, it's bizarre and puzzling why North Korea, this leader, has not tested a ballistic missile since September. Does he just not have the capability? Does he not have the arsenal? That's one possibility. But the U.S. does believe, and I'm directly going to the CNN article now. I hate doing that, but it's the most up-to-date one that I can find regarding this story. And CNN is citing that the U.S. believes Pyongyang may be able to put a miniaturized warhead on a missile sometime in 2018, giving it the theoretical capability to launch a missile with a warhead atop that could attack the U.S. So that's one concern that U.S. intel and security officials have. They could possibly attach a warhead to one of these missiles that's headed for the United States. We know that Pyongyang tested 2 missiles in July that demonstrated this ballistic, intercontinental ballistic range, and they're testing a more advanced version of their existing ICBM. This is what one U.S. official is telling news sources. So it looks like the concern, A, can they reach us? B, would they put a warhead on the top of one of these ballistic missiles? And C, how long until they have this capability? Now, the Telegraph, which is a UK news service, this is their live news feed, and the latest information that they're posting, North Korea fires ballistic missile that may have landed in Japan's exclusive economic zone. The reports that I initially got were that it landed in the sea off the coast of Japan. Did this in fact land in Japan's exclusive economic zone? I can confirm this. Now, they've been a pretty reliable news source. I just want to go through this really quickly. And this was updated 26 minutes ago. Now, this article doesn't even address that in the first 8 paragraphs, so that might have just been an attention grabber to get us to read this. Something that it does note, and I want to point this out, they talk about the Pentagon and our spokesperson, Rob Manning, and he says, quote, "We're in the process of assessing the situation and will provide additional details when available." So it's my assumption now we're almost 50 minutes waiting for the president to come and speak regarding this issue. We know that from the White House press secretary that he was briefed as it was flying over. He knew it was happening, and it looks like the delay in this, almost 50 minutes of a delay, most likely forming, my assumption would be that information is still breaking on this, which is why we haven't heard directly from the President of the United States. Now, the initial assessment, I want to take you back to this North Korean missile. The initial assessment was the altitude was at 4,500 km, about 2,800 miles in terms of altitude. Now, Jacob just updated me, should be any time now. Let's hope so. I hope so too. It's really difficult. So when you prep for a 30-minute newscast and then you do 30 minutes of newscasting and then you go over 50, and we don't, guys, we're always here for you and we're live. We try to bring you the most up-to-date information, but we're teleprompter free today, and so I just want to make sure that I have the right information and I'm bringing it to you as quickly as I can. This is something coming out of the initial assessment. It looks like the altitude was 2,800 miles. And here's some context. Will Ripley, who works at CNN, is trying to give the context. The International Space Station orbits at 408 km, roughly 253 miles. This is significantly higher than North Korea's July 28 ICBM launch. Yeah, goodness. And he's an international correspondent who's traveled frequently to North Korea. Let me retweet this. He's talking about South Korea and what they had, 44 minutes ago, South Korean military carried out a precision missile strike drill at 3:23 a.m. local in response to North Korea's missile launch. The precision missile strike matched flight distance of North Korean missile landed in waters off the East Coast. So it looks like South Korea is conducting a test, and they're trying to match the flight distance of this North Korean missile and the timing. South Korea responds to North Korean missile launch with a live fire drill of its own. South Korea, and I'm reading Will Ripley's tweets right now, who's an international correspondent stationed in Korea and frequently traveled to North Korea. South Korea Joint Chiefs of Staff say its counter-drill tested a scenario of simultaneously hitting a target through the land, air, and sea. They did not elaborate further. So this news, while it's breaking, in the past 4 years I've covered North Korean bluster, their activity, their testing of ICBMs, what they're doing, but they have yet to do something this provocative, this direct, doing it in the middle of the night. We were able to confirm the report that it happened. We're trying to still confirm where it hit. Did it hit off the coast, or as the Telegraph has it hitting in an economic zone of Japan? I can't confirm that, but it looks like other reports are saying that it simply hit off the coast of Japan. And let me head to the president's Twitter, see if we have anything breaking. So Jacob just gave us an update. He said 5 to 10 minutes, and we're still waiting for the president, and we're hearing that it could be any moment now. I'm going to head off the air here shortly if we don't have an update, a POTUS update. And I just want to make sure that I'm not missing it, as I can't see our live feed here. The last updates that I'm getting in my news feed were from 53 minutes ago. We brought you those updates, and then AOL had one from 2 hours ago. Of course, we're waiting to bring you the live cast of President Trump delivering his remarks in the wake of this ballistic missile test, or I hate to even call it a test, let's just call it a launch at this point. And he's going to be stepping into the press pool today and addressing reporters instead of Sarah Sanders in a typical press briefing. Okay. He's set to address the White House press pool on Tuesday, and we were in place waiting to bring you the press briefing just like every other day. We do this every day for you, and as soon as we have a press briefing announcement, we bring you a pre-show. But it looks like the president is going to be doing this himself today, and of course he was briefed on the situation coming in regarding North Korea and their latest move. The anticipation of the day was that the tax reform bill, what's moving forward, what isn't. Could we see a government shutdown? Because there's a lot of division regarding the budget and the tax bill. But it looks like that news has been put aside for the moment because of this missile launch. Now, my question would be, and I'm sure that somebody else is wondering this too if you're watching it, what is the U.S. response going to be? I know that we have to take a pretty strong position in terms of sanctions, in terms of rhetoric that we use when we talk about North Korea. I know that we have to pull our allies together and make sure that they're on the same page with us and putting the pressure on North Korea, namely China, in terms of making sure that they don't develop this nuclear program any further. But the appropriate U.S. response on this is incredibly mixed. And from a reporting perspective, I can tell you that there's such limited information coming out of North Korea because they have such a clampdown on news. They have the official news service, which is just simply propaganda. And I've got...
We will take care of it. We have General Mattis in the room with us, and we've had a long discussion on it. It is a situation that we will handle. With that being said, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi did not show up for our meeting today. I'm not really that surprised. We have a lot of differences. They're weak on crime. They're weak on illegal immigration. They want the illegal folks to come pouring into our border, and a lot of problems are being caused, although we've stopped it to a large extent, as much as you can without the wall, which we're going to get. They, before this meeting and before this missile launch, they've been weak on military in terms of spending. They're very hard to get for military. They want it for a lot of other things, but the military is always secondary to them. The military, to me, is number one. We won't be here without our powerful military, and we're building it up stronger, bigger, better than ever before, and General Mattis can testify to that. And the other thing, they want tax increases, and we want major tax decreases. So they decided not to show up. They've been all talk, and they've been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk. So they're not showing up for the meeting. I will say this, in light of the missile launch, probably they'll be here fairly quickly, or at least discussions will start taking place fairly quickly. I think that we're in a very good position in terms of the meeting we just had over at the Capitol with the Republican senators. It was outstanding. I think we have tremendous support. I was just informed by Mitch that we had a unanimous vote from the Republican side, at least. We had a unanimous vote on the tax bill, and it goes now the next step, and I think we're going to get it passed. I think it's going to pass, and it's going to be very popular. It's going to have lots of adjustments before it ends, but the end result would be a very, very massive, the largest in the history of our country, tax cut, and lots of good things are going to happen, including the bringing back to our country of, it probably will end up being over $4 trillion money offshore that's stagnant, that companies, and they're just not able to bring it back. So I think it's going to be a number over $4 trillion. Corporate will be able to compete now against the world. If you look at China, if you look at so many other countries, you look at many of the countries, China's at 15%. They're lower than us. We're getting it down to a level that is either going to be lower or right in the ballpark, so that we can compete much better with our companies, our great, great companies. And that means jobs, and it means lots of other things. I'm very happy to see that the consumer confidence level is just about the highest it's ever been. In fact, I don't want to make any mistakes in front of the press because you'll get me on it, but to the best of my knowledge, it's the highest it's ever been. Consumer confidence has been setting records. They have confidence in the people leading their country. And I will say that I think it's going to go better and better, and I do believe that this vote on taxes, which are really tax cuts and reform, is going to be very, very important. So we had a good day today. We had a phenomenal meeting with the Republican senators. We had, it was very special, that meeting. In many respects, I wish you could have been inside that room. It was very, very special. The camaraderie. It was somewhat of a love fest. They want to see it happen. They want to see it happen not only for the Republican Party. I think much more importantly, they want to see it happen for the country, because they know how important it is for us to compete and win. And with that, maybe we'll start with Paul Ryan to say a few words about where we stand with different things, and then I'll ask Mitch McConnell.
Okay. I'll just briefly say I think it's regrettable that our Democratic colleagues in the leadership chose not to join us today. For a bill to become a law, Congress has to pass a bill, and the President signs a bill. That means Congress and the White House always negotiate legislation. We have important work to do. We have big deadlines to meet. We have a military in need of our support, and that work needs to happen now. And I just think it's very regrettable that our Democratic colleagues in leadership chose to not participate, because we have to negotiate these bills to get this work done for the people we represent, and especially to help our military with these difficult situations we have. And I just hope that our friends in leadership on the other side of the aisle will choose to participate so we can get people's work done.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would just add, I've been in this position under a couple of previous presidents. I can't recall ever turning down an opportunity to go down to the White House. As the Speaker mentioned, only one person in America can sign a bill into law, and that's the President of the United States. You cannot negotiate the year-end, the omnibus spending bill without the person who signs the bill in the room. So I think the Democratic leaders in the House and Senate and need to understand the way the government works. And the administration has to be a part of the ultimate negotiation over what the spending level is going to be for the next year.
Well, we are very far apart because our views on crime and our views on immigration and the military, so many are different. But a lot of things have happened even over the last 2 hours with respect to the missile launch. We want our military funded, and we want it funded now. It's going to be bigger, better, stronger, it already is, than ever before. But we want to get going on that now. So that is a difference, in all fairness, from this morning when I told them that we're way, way far away. And with that, I may just have General Mattis say just a couple of words about what he has found out. General, do you want to say just a couple of little pieces of information?
Mr. President, Senator, Speaker, a little over 2.5 hours ago, North Korea launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. It went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they've taken. It's a research and development effort on their part to continue building ballistic missiles that could threaten everywhere in the world, basically. And in response, the South Koreans have fired some pinpoint missiles out into the water to make certain North Korea understands that they could be taken under fire by our ally. But the bottom line is it's a continued effort to build a threat, serve a ballistic missile threat that endangers world peace, regional peace, and certainly the United States.
Thank you, General, and we will take care of that situation. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. President, does it change anything to your basic approach to North Korea, to these missile launches today? Does it change anything about your basic approach to dealing with them?
Nothing changed. Nothing changed. We have a very serious approach, and nothing changed. We take it very seriously.
Do you believe there will be a government shutdown, Mr. President? And would you blame Democrats if that happens?
Well, if that happens, I would absolutely blame the Democrats. If it happens, it's going to be over illegals pouring into the country, crime pouring into the country, no border wall, which everybody wants. I got elected partially because of a border wall. You look at the military, we want strong funding for the military. They don't. So many things. As an example, they want high taxes. We want cut taxes. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to reform. We're going to simplify. They want high taxes. We want low taxes. So there's a lot of big differences. So we'll see what happens as to shut down. We'll see. But right now, things have changed over the last 2 hours because 2 hours ago a missile was launched. I think that will have a huge effect on Schumer and Pelosi. I think. We'll see. We're going to learn very soon. They should be calling immediately and say, we want to see you, but probably they won't because nothing to them is important other than raising taxes. That's the only thing they like doing is raising taxes. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Are the North Koreans, Mr. President, are the North Koreans thumbing their nose at you after your...
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.